When people hear medical devices, they often think of the machines that diagnose illness, like MRI scanners, or the monitors you see next to a hospital bed. But there's another part of this sector that feels more direct and more physical. It's the part where something is actually done to the body. That's what surgical and interventional platforms and implants is. It's the tools and implants used inside the operating room, the cath lab, and other procedure settings. And the key difference versus diagnostics is simple. Diagnostics gets paid when you test or scan someone, but this block earns money when a procedure happens, and often keeps earning as long as that platform stays in use. So what sits inside this block? There are robotic and advanced surgery platforms, like robotic systems, navigation, energy devices, and visualization. There's interventional cardiology and vascular, which is the world of catheters, balloons, stents, atherectomy, and thrombectomy. There's structural heart, especially transcatheter valves, and the delivery systems that put them in place. There's cardiac rhythm management, or CRM, pacemakers, defibrillators, leads, and electrophysiology tools. There's neuromodulation, like spinal cord stimulation, deep brain stimulation, and peripheral nerve stimulation. And finally, there's orthopedics, spine and trauma, hips, knees, extremities, plates and screws, and spine hardware. A helpful way to think about scale is this. Not every part of this block grows at the same speed. Some areas are mature and steady, while others are the faster growth pockets. For example, one estimate cited in the analysis says surgical robotics is about $4.3 billion in 2024 and could reach about $9.6 billion by 2033, which is high single-digit growth over that period. And structural heart and transcatheter valve categories are often forecast even faster, because they can replace open surgery for more patients over time. Now, what do these companies actually sell? They sell four big things. First, capital equipment, robots, navigation consoles, and imaging in the OR tools. Second, single-use or limited-use disposables, robotic instruments, drapes, cassettes, and catheters. Third, implants, joints, valves, stents, pacemakers, and neurostimulators. And fourth, services and software, maintenance contracts, analytics, workflow tools, and surgeon training. If you look at the attached platform plus pull-through idea, that's the core logic for many of the most attractive business models here. One robot sale can create a long stream of recurring instrument revenue, case after case, year after year. Who buys all this? The main customers are hospitals and health systems, because they run ORs and cath labs. Ambulatory surgery centers, or ASCs, are also important for selected procedures, especially orthopedics. Surgeons and interventionalists matter hugely because they strongly influence product choice. And payers and governments sit in the background because they decide what gets reimbursed, and that shapes what gets adopted. In the value chain, this block sits right at the intervention stage, downstream of diagnosis and upstream of post-acute care. And it depends on four foundations: clinical evidence and approvals from regulators, reimbursement from payers, training and workflow inside hospitals, and procurement structures like hospitals, GPOs, and tenders. It also connects tightly to other MedTech blocks. Diagnostics and imaging determine which patients get procedures and when. Hospital monitoring and drug delivery supports the perioperative pathway and recovery. And distribution channels make sure implants and disposables show up on time and inventory is managed. Before we move on, the analysis also gave illustrative examples of listed companies in this block, and these are not stock recommendations, just examples to help you understand who lives here. For robotics and platforms, one example is Intuitive Surgical. For orthopedics and enabling tools, you see names like Stryker, Zimmer Biomet, and Smith plus Nephew. For broad cardiovascular and neuroexposure, the analysis mentioned Medtronic and Abbott. For interventional cardiology and electrophysiology, you have Boston Scientific. For structural heart, the analysis pointed to Edwards Lifesciences. For spine and enabling tech, it included Globus Medical. And for surgical endoscopy and visualization, core OR infrastructure, it included Olympus. The analysis also named two newer or emerging challengers and explained what they're doing differently. PROCEPT Biorobotics is described as going narrow and procedure-specific, focused on urology and BPH, rather than trying to be an all-purpose robot. The logic is that a focused wedge can speed adoption because training is simpler, the value proposition is clearer, and hospitals can justify ROI through one high-volume service line. Vicarious surgical is described as pursuing a lower footprint, potentially lower cost robotic architecture, aimed at making robotics easier to fit and finance for more hospitals over time. Another classic challenger angle. All right, let's pause and summarize what we've covered so far. We've defined what this block is, what sits inside it, what it sells, who buys it, and where it sits in the healthcare value chain, plus a set of illustrative company examples and a couple of challengers. The next logical step is to talk about how these businesses actually make money and what drives their economics, because that's what determines long-term returns. So let's talk business models, economics, and drivers. The first big model is platform plus consumables, the razor and razor blade structure. A hospital buys a robot or a navigation system, and then the company earns recurring revenue per case through instruments and disposables, plus service and software. The second model is procedure-linked implants. Here, revenue scales with procedure volumes: hips, knees, valves, stents, pacemakers. The third model is the interventional world of catheters and disposable portfolios. This is volume-driven, but still can be differentiated by deliverability, outcomes, complication rates, and, quote, how easy it is to use. And the fourth model is the therapy ecosystem approach. In CRM and neuromodulation, it's not just the implant. It's the follow-up systems, the programmer, and a replacement cycle over years. The analysis included a concrete example to make this real. One published overview noted per procedure disposable and instrument costs around $2,500, and maintenance contracts that can be six-figure annual amounts, though it varies by platform and contract. The analysis also gave a cost reality that helps you understand why reimbursement and procurement matter so much. In some procedures, the device itself can be a huge portion of total case economics. For example, TAVR device costs have been published in broad ranges of roughly $17,000 to $45,000 per valve, depending on system and setting. And for orthopedic implants, hospitals pay thousands per joint implant set. The analysis cited published review ranges for implant costs in hip arthroplasty of roughly $2,400 to $12,651 across studies and settings. Where does capital get tied up in these businesses? The analysis is clear. Capital goes into R&D and clinical trials because you have to prove safety and value and win new indications. It goes into manufacturing quality systems that can meet regulatory standards. It goes into a costly sales force and clinical specialists because in many segments, you need presence in the OR and training support. It goes into education infrastructure like courses and proctorship. And it goes into the installed base service network, field engineers, parts, and uptime, because reliability is part of the product. Now the basic economic logic: what drives margins and returns? A lot comes down to utilization. More procedures per installed base means more pull-through revenue and better ROI for both hospital and vendor. Mix matters: premium implants and valves versus commodity categories. Surgeon preference and outcomes matter because they drive pricing power and share stability. Switching costs matter because workflow and training create inertia, and procurement structure matters because tenders and GPOs can shift power to buyers. The analysis laid out 5 drivers that matter most. First is procedure volumes, driven by demographics and access. The attached OECD chart helps you see how large joint replacement demand can be across developed markets. In the most recent year shown, hip replacement rates per 100,000 population are very high in countries like Germany at 351 and Switzerland at 349, while they're far lower in places like Mexico at 7. Knee replacement shows a similar spread, with Switzerland at 318 and Mexico at 3 per 100,000. Second is reimbursement and the site of care shift, especially hospital to outpatient or ASC. The attached outpatient chart makes this shift very concrete for Medicare joint replacements. It moves from 0.7% outpatient in 2015 to 4.9% in 2018, then jumps to 18.2% in 2019, 33% in 2020, 57% in 2021, and 69% in 2022. Fourth is procurement pressure, like tenders and volume-based procurement. The analysis gave a striking example. In one documented case, China's volume-based procurement drove coronary stent prices down by about 92.7%. And if you look at the attached stent expenditure figure, you can see how policy can create sharp step changes in spending patterns over time. Now, let's transition. We've covered what this block is and what sits inside it, and we've explained the main business models, where capital goes, and what drives profitability. The next natural step is to zoom into the customer in a more practical way, because in this block, buying decisions are unusually shaped by surgeon behavior, hospital standardization, and patient pathways. Hospitals and health systems buy platforms, standardize implants, and run high-volume service lines. Surgeons and interventionalists drive product choice through outcomes, familiarity, and workflow. Usage here is procedure-driven, not like a consumer app with daily active users. Peaks follow orthopedic seasonality for elective cases, the underlying burden of cardio disease in cath labs, and capacity constraints like staffing and OR time. Stickiness is high. Surgeons build muscle memory. Hospitals standardize trays and inventory. Retraining is costly. And outcomes risk makes people conservative. On top of that, platforms become even stickier through service contracts, software integration, and instrument compatibility. The analysis also highlighted a major recent shift. More procedures moving outpatient were clinically appropriate, especially joint replacement. This changes what wins. Shorter length of stay pathways, simpler setups, and ASC-friendly economics. It also described digital surgery becoming real. Navigation plus planning plus data, and eventually AI assistance, sold as software and service layers on top of hardware. It also noted cybersecurity expectations becoming formal and ongoing, and procurement nationalism or reciprocity rising, which can shape tender access across regions. Overall, these changes shift power toward systems that control ASCs and toward scaled vendors, while commoditized categories face more price pressure. Finally, let's bring this home with the most important part, the future outlook and scenarios. In the near term, the analysis frames the theme as efficiency and procurement realism over the next 1 to 2 years. What stays the same is the core engine. Procedures drive revenue, and surgeon workflow and training keep switching costs high. Platform plus consumables economics remain attractive where utilization is high. What may shrink is the profitability of Me Too products in tendered categories, and hospitals may slow big capex if budgets are tight. What may grow is ASC-compatible orthopedics continuing to expand, structural heart growth continuing as indications broaden, and software and service layers becoming a larger share of profit. In the medium term, over 3 to 5 years, the theme is site of care shift plus a robotic second wave. The market still rewards ecosystems and training, and replacement cycles remain durable. Hardware-only strategies without data and software layers may lose pricing power. Robotics adoption can expand beyond early adopters through smaller footprints, lower total cost, and specialty-focused systems. In the long term, 7 to 10 years out, the theme is digital surgery and market restructuring. High-stakes interventions still require trusted devices, clinical data, and regulated manufacturing. But commodity device pricing power could erode further under bulk buying procurement models, and some profit pools could migrate from pure hardware toward software, services, and data. The analysis then laid out 3 scenarios. In the upside scenario, robotics adoption accelerates, structural heart volumes expand, and outpatient orthopedics keep shifting safely, improving throughput. In the base scenario, procedure volumes grow steadily, procurement pressure keeps pricing tight, and winners are those with outcomes, efficiency, and service revenue. In the downside scenario, tender intensity expands globally, hospital budgets tighten delaying capex, and regulatory and cybersecurity burdens raise costs. So demand persists, but profitability becomes harder to defend without true differentiation.